Early in the morning, Seth wakes up to face another dull and lonely day. He doesn't have friends or family, his only company comes from the dogs at the animal control center where he works. After making sure all the animals are fed, Seth steps into the cage with a dog named Lexi, cuddling her just to feel some affection. One evening, Seth is riding the bus home when he spots Holly. Surprised, he approaches her to say hello, but she doesn't recognize him at first. He explains that they went to high school together though they never really hung out. Seth was a year above her, but he knew who she was since she had been popular. He notices she's writing in a notebook and calls her a writer, but Holly clarifies she works as a waitress and only writes as a hobby. Seth tries making a joke, but it falls flat and the mood quickly turns awkward. Soon Holly gets off the bus and Seth tries to ask her out, though she doesn't hear him. That night, Seth looks her up on social media and is pleased to see she owns a dog. The next day he asks his coworker Nate for advice on how to talk to girls. Nate tells him to be confident and funny. Later, Seth is devastated to learn that Lexi has to be put down. He holds her on the table, talking to her sweetly in her final moments. The vet reminds him he could adopt her, but Seth explains he lives in a no-pets building and can't afford to move somewhere else. After Lexi is euthanized, Seth takes her body to the crematory. Removing her profile from her cage afterward, he hears a noise coming from the restricted area. When he checks it out, he doesn't find anything unusual. That evening, Seth continues to stalk Holly's social media, taking notes on every detail he learns. He studies all her photos and eventually figures out where she works. The next day he goes to the diner where she's a waitress and introduces himself again, since she doesn't remember him. He compliments her hair, but Holly keeps it professional and just brings him his food. When he asks her out, she turns him down, saying she has a boyfriend. Seth immediately blurts out that she doesn't, which unsettles her. She leaves the check on the table and walks away. That night, Holly feels like someone is following her on her way home. It's Seth, hiding outside in the bushes near her house. Holly tells her roommate Claire that someone is outside, but Claire dismisses it as paranoia. Later, Holly gets a drunk call from her ex-boyfriend Eric. After she hangs up, Claire tells her she should forgive Eric because being alone is worse, but Holly refuses and drinks instead. The next day at work, Holly finds a huge bouquet of flowers waiting for her with a card that simply says, "Be mine." After her shift, she visits Eric at his bar, assuming he sent them. But he insists it wasn't him and tries to convince her to give their relationship another shot. Holly reminds him that he cheated, shutting him down. Just then, Seth also shows up at the bar and watches them from a distance. When Holly goes outside to smoke and write in her notebook, Seth follows her and awkwardly tries to start a conversation. She still doesn't recognize him at first and decides to leave. That's when Seth admits he sent the flowers. Holly finally remembers who he is, realizing he's been stalking her. Seth desperately insists he isn't a psycho and just wants to talk, claiming he's never forgotten her since high school. Holly tries to walk away again, but Seth blocks her path. She panics, shoves him off and rushes back inside. Eric notices Seth following her and after Holly explains he tried to grab her, Eric jumps over the counter and punches Seth in the face. Even bleeding on the floor, Seth can't stop laughing, which only angers Eric more. Holly has to pull Eric back before he does more damage. Eric throws Seth out of the bar, warning him never to return. As Seth stumbles outside, he notices Holly dropped her notebook. Later at home, Seth tends to his injuries before flipping through the notebook. He quickly realizes it's Holly's personal journal, filled with her private thoughts and frustrations. He stays up all night reading it, feeling like he's finally connected to her true self. The next day at work, Seth sneaks into the restricted area and discovers a hidden hatch in the floor. It leads to an old abandoned room that's still connected to the power lines, sparking an idea. Over the next few days he works obsessively on a plan. He orders supplies online and follows tutorials to build a cage in the underground room. He also keeps reading Holly's journal and begins stealing medicine from the shelter's infirmary. At home he tests the sedative on himself, instantly knocking out without side effects. One night, Holly notices someone tailing her again. She turns quickly but Seth hides before she can spot him. When she feels the presence again, she pulls out her pepper spray and accidentally sprays a homeless man. Panicked, she runs away while Seth lurks nearby watching. Instead of helping, Seth follows the injured man for a while before returning to his plan. That night, he climbs a wall and slips into Holly's apartment through her window. While she's in the bathroom taking medication, she hears a noise in the living room. She rushes over only to find the open window, which she quickly shuts. As she heads to bed, Seth jumps on her and injects her with the sedative. Holly struggles for a few seconds before going limp. Seth transports Holly to the shelter, hiding her inside a large box. When Nate questions it, Seth claims their boss called him about a late-night delivery. Nate buys the excuse and only asks Seth to sign in. Inside the box, Holly starts waking up and makes noise. Seth coughs loudly to cover it, but when she makes another sound, Nate briefly notices before blaming it on the air conditioner. Seth carries the box to the abandoned room and leaves Holly inside the cage. When she wakes up, she panics, clawing at the bars until she rips a nail off by accident. Screaming for help, she only manages to set the dogs barking upstairs, which Nate assumes is normal behavior. The next morning, Seth visits her with a bedpan and tries to talk kindly, but Holly insults him. Seth responds by saying she's lost her right to food and that they'll try again tomorrow. He ignores her desperate screams as he leaves. Once alone, Holly starts using the locked chain to file at the bars. The following day, Seth finally gives her some water and food. When she begs him not to leave, Seth tells her it's important to establish boundaries in their relationship, and repeats that they'll try again tomorrow. That night, Holly begins hallucinating that Claire is with her, taunting her with all the horrible things Seth might do. Overwhelmed, Holly yells at the vision to shut up. Later, she's forced to use the bedpan, and in the middle of it, a rat scurries up to her. She panics, kicking at it repeatedly until she kills it. The next day, Seth comes in to clean up the blood. Holly asks if he plans to assault her and he says no. When she asks if he's going to kill her, he replies, "I hope not," which terrifies her even more. He explains that killing her may be his only option if he fails to save her. Holly assumes he's part of some cult or twisted religion, but Seth insists he's doing this for her, not himself. He tells her she's special, that before meeting her he was lost and lonely, and he thought she truly saw him. But then he realized the Holly she shows the world is just a fake version. He wants to uncover the real Holly, to see if she's worth saving. If she isn't, then she'll never leave the room. Holly spits more insults at him, and Seth leaves her alone again. On his way out of the restricted area, Seth runs into Nate, who reminds him that he isn't supposed to be snooping around down there. Nate sends him off to clean while he checks the door but finds it locked. That night, Holly hallucinates Claire again, who asks what her plan is. Holly simply says she'll wait. The next morning, Seth shows Holly that he has her journal. He tells her he feels sorry for her, especially since she writes about love in such a bleak way. Holly fires back that a creepy stalker like him can't possibly understand love either. Then Seth asks about Claire, revealing he overheard Holly talking in two voices when he came in. He presses her on whether Claire is in the room, and Holly says no, even though she sees her friend standing behind Seth. She admits she knows Claire isn't really there, but Seth clarifies he's not just talking about this room. Holly has been hallucinating Claire back at home too. As Seth continues digging into the journal, the truth comes out. Claire was real once and lived with Holly around the time Holly got engaged to Eric. Eventually, Claire had an affair with Eric, which Holly discovered by snooping through his email. One day during a car ride, Holly confronted Claire. Claire apologized and insisted it didn't mean anything, but Holly was furious. She started driving recklessly, ranting about the betrayal. Dodging traffic, she eventually lost control and crashed the car. Both women survived the crash, covered in blood. Holly pulled a glass shard out of her own stomach, then used it to stab Claire in the eye, killing her. Later, the police ruled that Claire's death had been caused by the accident. Back in the present, Holly tells Seth she's a fiction writer. Seth admits that's why he had to be sure before going to the police. He's been tailing her for days, and in that time he's realized that since Claire's death, Holly has been murdering strangers on the street in brutal ways. It was Holly who burned the homeless man alive. Seth thinks she keeps her journal because deep down she wants to be caught and punished for what she did to Claire, but he isn't here to punish her. He insists he's here to save her. Holly nods and says she wants to be saved, though privately she's lying. After Seth leaves, Claire's hallucination claps mockingly, and Holly admits she's just playing along to make Seth think he has a chance. During his next visit, Seth brings Holly water and a cloth to clean herself. He can't stop staring at her skin. They talk about the murders, and Holly claims she genuinely enjoys killing. Seth doesn't buy it, believing she's only acting out of guilt and trauma. Holly then tells him about sharks in aquariums bashing their heads against the glass walls, and she imitates them by smashing her own head against the bars until Seth begs her to stop. She taunts him further, saying that if she kills herself, the cops will blame him. Disturbed, Seth leaves. Later, Seth gets called into his boss's office and is scolded for slacking at work. She won't fire him yet, but she writes him up with a disciplinary notice, one more strike and he's out. The next time Seth visits Holly, he only gives her 2 chocolate bars, telling her she needs to learn she's not in control. If she doesn't behave, she won't eat at all. Holly tries manipulating him by painting a picture of them living happily at the beach together. Seth caves and agrees to bring her more food. When Seth heads upstairs to grab snacks, Nate spots him sneaking out of the restricted area again. This time, Nate checks the door and finds it unlocked. He goes down through the hatch and is stunned to discover Holly trapped in the cage. Holly begs him for help and Nate starts banging on the lock. At that moment, Seth returns. Holly motions to him silently, encouraging him to attack. While she distracts Nate, Seth sneaks up and smashes him in the head. Nate fights back, shoving Seth against the wall, so Seth pulls a knife and stabs him several times before bolting. As Nate tries to pursue, Holly sticks her leg out to trip him. Then she sweetly urges Seth to finish him off. Seth smashes Nate's head with a cinder block while Holly watches with twisted delight. When it's over, Seth breaks down horrified. But Holly calms him, giving him step-by-step instructions on how to dispose of the body. Using veterinary tools, Seth removes Nate's teeth, fingerprints, and nails. Then he chops up the body, feeding the pieces to the dogs. Whatever remains, he burns in the crematory. After showering, Seth calls his boss to say Nate went on an errand and never returned. Later he dumps the teeth into a river. Back at the shelter, Seth cleans up the blood while Holly rambles, teasing him about being drawn to her dark side. She grabs his hand, nuzzling it, then tries to force him into touching her intimately. Seth pulls away. When he goes back to the office, he finds a detective searching Nate's things. The detective interrogates Seth about the last time he saw Nate, but Seth's story doesn't add up. The detective also notices that Seth already refers to Nate in the past tense, which raises even more suspicion. The next day, Seth has to move carefully around the shelter, with the detective still digging into Nate's disappearance. He brings Holly food, but she refuses to move or speak. After several days of begging, Seth finally convinces her to talk. She demands his finger as proof of love. At first, Seth refuses. Holly launches into another manipulative speech about feeling different and alienated her whole life, insisting that only Seth understands her. Overwhelmed, Seth retreats to the bathroom and has a breakdown. After some time he returns. Holly promises to behave if he gives her what she asked for. In agony, Seth cuts off his finger and offers it to her. Instead of taking it, Holly snatches the knife and threatens to kill herself unless he sets her free. Terrified, Seth unlocks the cage. Holly stumbles out on shaky legs, pushes him against the wall, and tells him she loves him before kissing him. Then, without hesitation, she slashes his neck with the knife. As Seth bleeds out, the Claire hallucination appears again, pointing to the open door in the background. Sometime later, Holly is back with Eric, her old flame. She's also secured a publishing deal to turn her journal into a novel. One day, when Eric's phone rings, Holly sees a message that reveals he's cheating again. Strangely, she stays calm, hands him the phone, and says nothing. Afterward, Holly heads to an abandoned warehouse, where she's keeping Seth locked in a cage. Now mutilated, he serves as her outlet. Every time she feels the urge to kill, she tortures him instead. In her own twisted way, Seth has saved her after all. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can catch more stories like this. Thanks for watching.